The stone floor was colder than Alara remembered. Or maybe it was just that her knees had finally given out. She couldn't tell anymore, couldn't distinguish between the chill seeping through her torn dress and the fever burning beneath her skin. The grand hall stretched endlessly before her, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadow, torches flickering along walls carved with the names of every alpha who had ever ruled the Shadowpine Pack. None of those names were hers. None ever would be. Traitor. Curse. Weakling. The words followed her like wolves circling prey, whispered from the throats of packmates who once smiled at her in passing. Now they formed a wall of bodies on either side of the aisle, their eyes gleaming with something worse than hatred. Satisfaction. Hey there, beautiful souls. I'm so glad you're here with me for this story. Seriously, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I love knowing where my pack is scattered across the world. And listen, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it now. You're about to go on an emotional journey that'll have you on the edge of your seat, and trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. This channel? It's where broken hearts get mended and underdogs rise. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's dive in together. Now, back to Alara. Her legs trembled with every step. She forced them forward anyway, one foot dragging slightly behind the other. The hem of her dress, already threadbare, already stained, caught on the uneven stone and tore further. No one moved to help her. No one even looked away. They wanted to see her fall. Alara kept her eyes down, focusing on the cracks in the floor, the dried blood still visible between certain stones from past judgments. The full Moon Tribunal was not known for mercy. It was known for finality. Just make it to the center. Just make it there. The circle waited ahead, an ancient ring of silver embedded in the stone, wide enough to hold a dozen accused at once. Tonight, it would hold only her. She could feel him before she saw him. The weight of his presence pressed down on the hall like a storm rolling over mountains. Alpha King Jareth sat on the throne at the far end, elevated above them all, carved from black wood and wrapped in furs darker than midnight. He didn't move, didn't speak. He simply watched. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs, each beat a small agony. She'd seen him before, of course. Everyone had. You didn't grow up in Shadowpine without knowing the shape of your Alpha King, the legend who'd taken the throne at 19 after his father's assassination, who'd crushed 3 rival packs before his 21st birthday, who ruled with a hand so iron-firm that even whispers of dissent disappeared before they could take root. But she'd never been this close. Never stood, barely stood, in his direct line of sight. His eyes were pale, almost silver in the torchlight, and they tracked her movement with the patience of a predator deciding whether something was worth the kill. Alara reached the edge of the circle and stopped. Her vision swam. Black spots danced at the periphery. She locked her knees, willing her body to obey for just a few minutes longer. Just a little longer. Just until it's over. Alara Thorne. The voice came from her left, Commander Ronan, the Alpha King's right hand, his most trusted warrior. He stood just outside the circle, arms crossed over a chest broad enough to break bones, his expression carved from stone. His dark hair was tied back, revealing the 3 scars that ran from temple to jaw, marks from a battle that had made him a legend. Marks that lied about who he really was. Alara didn't look at him. Couldn't. If she did, she might break. You stand accused, Ronan continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, of sabotaging the sacred boundary wards that protect this pack, of weakening our defenses, of inviting death to our doorstep. A ripple moved through the crowd, anger, fear, bloodlust all tangled together. The evidence has been presented. The council has deliberated. Ronan's joy tightened, just barely. Only someone watching closely would see it. Do you deny these charges? This was it. The moment she was supposed to defend herself. To scream her innocence. To name the real traitor standing 3 feet away, draped in honor he'd stolen. Alara's lips parted. Say it. Say his name. Tell them the truth. But the truth would tear the pack apart. Ronan wasn't just the commander, he was beloved. A hero. The man who'd saved dozens of lives during the northern raids, who trained the young warriors, who stood at the Alpha King's side through every threat and every triumph. If she accused him, half the pack would call her a liar. The other half would demand proof she didn't have. And in the chaos, in the fracture of trust and loyalty, the real enemies would strike. The boundary wards were already failing. She'd felt it every night for weeks, the way the magic frayed at the edges, the way darkness pressed closer. If the pack turned on itself now, they wouldn't survive what was coming. So Alara did what she'd been doing for months. She stayed silent. Her voice cracked, barely a whisper. She tried again. I don't deny it. The hall erupted. Shouts of rage, calls for execution, the stamp of feet demanding justice. Someone threw something, a stone, maybe, that clattered across the floor near her feet. Alara swayed. The world tilted sideways, colors bleeding together. Her knees buckled and she caught herself on nothing, arms windmilling uselessly as the strength finally bled out of her legs completely. She hit the ground hard. The cold stone slammed against her cheek, her shoulder, her hip. Pain exploded through her ribs, the ones that were already cracked, already screaming. She gasped and tasted copper. No. Get up. You have to get up. But her body had nothing left to give. Through the haze, she heard the Alpha King stand. Heard his boots strike stone as he descended from the throne, each step deliberate and unhurried. The crowd fell silent. Alara tried to push herself up, managed to get one arm beneath her before it gave out. She collapsed again, cheek pressed to stone, lungs burning. This is it. This is how it ends. She'd known it would come to this eventually. Known that protecting them would cost her everything. She just hadn't expected it to hurt this much. The Alpha King's boots appeared in her line of sight, black leather, unlaced at the top, silent despite their size. He crouched, slow and controlled, until his face was level with hers. And then he went completely still. Alara couldn't see his expression. Her vision was tunneling, darkness creeping in from all sides. But she heard his breathing change. Heard the sharp intake of breath that didn't match the moment. Her scent, the Alpha King said, so quiet it was barely more than a thought. No one else heard it. But Alara did. And somewhere in the back of her fading consciousness, wrapped in pain and exhaustion and the knowledge that she'd done everything she could, she wondered what he meant. The last thing Alara remembered before the darkness took her completely was the feeling of being lifted. Strong arms, careful despite their strength, sliding beneath her knees and shoulders. The scent of pine and smoke and something wilder, something that made her wolf whimper in recognition even as her human consciousness slipped away. Then nothing. She woke to pain. It wasn't new pain, that would have been almost refreshing. This was the old kind, the familiar ache that had become her constant companion over the past 3 months. Ribs that screamed with every breath. Bruises layered so deep they'd stopped changing color. The burning exhaustion that came from pouring too much of yourself into magic you were never supposed to touch. Alara opened her eyes slowly, expecting the damp stone of the holding cells beneath the grand hall. Instead, she found herself in a room she didn't recognize. The ceiling was wood, not stone. Dark beams crossed overhead, and between them, she could see painted symbols, protection wards, ancient ones, the kind that took decades to properly set. A window to her left showed the deep blue of pre-dawn sky, and through it, she could hear the forest breathing. This wasn't a cell. This was the Alpha's wing. No. Alara tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Her ribs seized, sending lightning through her chest. She gasped and fell back against pillows that were far too soft, far too clean. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The voice came from the corner, female, measured, with an edge that suggested humor was a weapon she wielded often. Ilara turned her head carefully and found a woman sitting in a chair by the cold fireplace, one leg crossed over the other, a book balanced on her knee. She was beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. Sharp cheekbones, darker skin that seemed to glow in the dim light, black hair cut short enough to expose the triple-marked tattoo on her neck, the symbol of the Beta bloodline. Her eyes, when they lifted from the book, were the color of amber catching fire. "You've been out for 6 hours, the woman said, closing the book with a soft snap. "The healer said you'd probably sleep for 12, but I had a feeling you'd be stubborn about it." Ilara's throat was dry as sand. "Where?" "The king's guest quarters." The woman stood, moving with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime training for violence. Or what we're calling them for now. Easier than explaining why the accused traitor is sleeping in a room 3 doors down from the Alpha King's personal chambers. She crossed to a side table, poured water from a pitcher into a cup, and brought it to Ilara. Up close, she was even more intimidating, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that made you want to either follow her into battle or get out of her way. Ilara took the cup with shaking hands. "Who are you?" "Maya Clearwater. Beta of Shadowpine, which means I get to deal with all the messes our dear Alpha creates when he makes impulsive decisions." Maya settled on the edge of the bed, far enough away to be respectful, but close enough to catch Ilara if she tried something stupid. "Like ordering you brought here instead of to the cells." The water was cold and perfect. Ilara drank half the cup before her brain caught up with the words. Why would he do that? That, Maya said, her eyes narrowing slightly, is an excellent question. One I've been asking myself for the past 6 hours while watching you sleep and wondering what the hell is going on. Ilara set the cup down carefully on the nightstand, her hands still trembling. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she couldn't even sit up without wanting to scream. I should be in the cells. Probably. The pack will. Oh, the pack is furious. Maya's smile was sharp. Half of them want your head on a spike. The other half just want you gone. Commander Ronan has been particularly vocal about the danger of showing leniency to traitors. At Ronan's name, something must have shown on Ilara's face because Maya's expression shifted, became calculating in a way that made Ilara's stomach drop. Interesting, Maya murmured. You flinched. I didn't. Yes, you did. Small, but I saw it. Maya leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping. I've been beta of this pack for 7 years, Ilara Thorne. I've watched you for most of that time, quiet little Omega, no family, no status, no trouble. You kept your head down, did your work, never caused problems. Ilara's pulse hammered in her throat. So when you show up accused of the most serious crime we've seen in a decade, and you don't even try to defend yourself, Maya's amber eyes burned into hers. It makes me wonder what you're protecting. She knows. Or suspects. Either way, this is dangerous. I'm not protecting anything, Ilara said, hating how weak her voice sounded. I did what I'm accused of. Bullshit. The word was flat, absolute. Maya stood and walked back to the window, looking out at the lightning sky. You want to know what I think? I think you're the worst liar I've ever met. I think you're covering for someone. And I think whoever that someone is, they're important enough that you'd rather die than expose them. Ilara said nothing. Silence was the only defense she had left. Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. The Alpha King wants to see you. Once you're strong enough to stand. I can stand now. No, you can't. Maya turned back to face her. The healer said your ribs are cracked in 3 places. You have internal bruising consistent with repeated trauma over an extended period. Your body temperature was dangerously low when they brought you in, and your magic reserves are so depleted it's a miracle you're conscious at all. Ilara's hands clenched in the blanket. So I'll ask you this once, Omega to Omega, woman to woman. Maya crossed her arms. Who's been hurting you? The question landed like a physical blow. No one had asked. In all the months of pain, of hiding bruises, of forcing herself to heal just enough to function, no one had ever asked if someone was hurting her. They'd just assumed she was clumsy, weak, unworthy of concern. Tears burned behind Alara's eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. No one. Alara. No one, she repeated, harder this time. I'm fine. Maya studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then she sighed. Fine. Keep your secrets. But know this, the Alpha King doesn't show mercy often. The fact that you're here, alive, in his personal wing, that means something. And if you're smart, you'll figure out what before someone else does. She moved toward the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. There's food on the table when you're ready. The healer will be back in an hour to check on you. And Alara. Alara met her eyes. Whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it alone. Then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. Alara sat in the silence, her ribs aching, her head spinning, and for the first time in months, she wanted to cry. Not from pain, not from fear. From the simple, devastating kindness of being told she didn't have to face this alone. Even though she did. Even though she always had. The food was simple: bread, cheese, sliced apples, cold meat. Alara ate slowly, forcing herself to finish even though her stomach rebelled. She needed strength. Needed to be able to think clearly. Because Maya was right about one thing, the Alpha King showing mercy made no sense. Unless her scent. That's what he'd said right before she passed out. Something about her scent. Alara pressed her palm to her chest, feeling the too-fast rhythm of her heart. She'd never met the Alpha King before last night. Never spoken to him, never crossed his path in any meaningful way. So why would he recognize her scent? The answer came slowly, dragging itself up from memories she'd buried deep. The raid. She'd been 7 years old. Maybe 8, time got fuzzy in the years after her parents died. She'd been living on the edges of the pack territory, more feral than civilized, surviving on scraps and the occasional kindness of wolves who remembered her mother. The raiders had come at night, rogues, desperate and vicious, looking for anything they could steal. Alara had hidden in a hollow tree, pressed so far back into the darkness that she could barely breathe. She'd watched them kill 3 wolves before someone stopped them. A young warrior, barely more than a boy himself, with pale eyes and a fury that burned like winter fire. He'd fought with a savageness that terrified her, but when it was over, when the rogues lay dead or fleeing, he'd found her, pulled her from the tree with gentle hands, asked her name. She'd been too scared to answer. He'd wrapped her in his cloak, too big, smelling of pine and smoke, and carried her back toward the pack center. But somewhere along the way, she'd wriggled free. Run back into the forest, because staying meant questions, meant being dragged before the Alpha, meant facing the pack that had never wanted her in the first place. She'd never seen the warrior again. But she'd kept the cloak for years, until it fell apart completely. No, it couldn't be. The Alpha King would have been 19 during those raids. The timing was right. And the scent, pine and smoke and something wild, matched the memory she'd carried without realizing it. Alara's hands started shaking again. If he remembered her, if he'd recognized her after all these years. What did that mean? A knock at the door made her jump, sending fresh pain through her ribs. She bit back a gasp as the door opened and an elderly woman entered, the pack healer, judging by the worn leather bag she carried and the herb-stained fingers. Well, the healer said, her voice creaky but kind. You're looking better than you did 6 hours ago. That's something. Alara tried to smile. Failed. Thank you for whatever you did. Don't thank me yet. I haven't finished. The healer set her bag down and pulled out various bottles and bundles of dried plants. The beta said you've been awake. Good. I need you conscious for this part. For what part? The healer's expression grew serious. For the part where I figure out why your magic feels like it's been eating you alive from the inside out. Alara's blood turned to ice. And the healer continued, pulling out a small knife that gleamed silver in the dawn light, for the part where we test exactly what kind of blood runs through your veins. The silver knife caught the morning light as the healer turned it over in her weathered hands. "This won't hurt," she said, which was exactly what people said right before something hurt. "Much." Alara pressed herself back against the headboard, her ribs screaming in protest. "What are you testing for?" "The truth." The healer, her name was Iris, Alara remembered now, one of the few wolves who'd shown her mother kindness before the fever took her, sat on the edge of the bed with a gentleness that belied her bluntness. "Hold out your hand, child." "I don't understand." "Your magic signature is wrong." Iris's eyes, clouded with age but sharp as ever, fixed on Alara's face. "I've been healing wolves in this pack for 53 years. I know what Omega magic feels like. What Beta magic feels like. What Alpha magic feels like." She paused, letting the weight of that last word settle between them. "And yours, Alara Thorn, feels like it's trying to be something it was never meant to be." Alara's mouth went dry. "I'm just an Omega. You know that. Everyone knows that. I know what you were registered as when your parents died." Iris reached out and took Alara's hand before she could pull away, turning it palm up. "I also know your mother never let me examine you properly. Always made excuses. Always kept you hidden." The knife pressed against Alara's palm, not cutting yet, just resting there. Silver burned against werewolf skin, a warning and a test. "Silver reacts to bloodline purity," Iris said softly. "The stronger the alpha blood, the more it burns. Omegas barely feel it. Betas get a sting. Alphas," she met Alara's eyes. "Alphas bleed fire." "Then you already know I'm Omega," Alara said, hating the desperate edge in her voice. "Because I've touched silver before. It doesn't. Not like this, you haven't." Iris drew the blade across Alara's palm in one swift motion. The cut was shallow, barely more than a scratch. The pain was excruciating. Alara gasped, tried to pull her hand back, but Iris held firm. The silver burned like she'd pressed her palm to hot coals, and where her blood welled up dark red, too dark it sizzled against the blade. "Blessed goddess," Iris breathed. The burning intensified. Alara bit down on her lip hard enough to taste copper, refusing to scream, refusing to give voice to the agony racing up her arm. Through watering eyes, she watched her blood react to the silver like acid to metal, bubbling and smoking. Then Iris removed the knife and wrapped Alara's hand in a clean cloth, muttering under her breath. The burning faded slowly, leaving behind a throb that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. "You're not Omega," Iris said flatly. "You're not even Beta." Alara's world tilted. "That's impossible." "Impossible would be surviving what you've been doing to yourself for the past 3 months. Iris pulled the cloth away, revealing the cut, which was already starting to heal, faster than it should. "The boundary warts. You've been reinforcing them, haven't you? Pouring your own magic into holes that should have required a team of trained alphas to repair. There was no point in lying. Not anymore." "How did you?" "Because I've seen what happens when wolves push past their limits. When they burn themselves out trying to hold together magic too big for them." Iris's voice cracked slightly. "I watched your mother do the same thing right before she died. Everything stopped. The room, the world, Alara's breath, all of it froze. My mother died of fever," she whispered. "Everyone said. Everyone lied." Iris stood, moving to the window with the heaviness of someone carrying old grief. "Your mother was the daughter of Alpha Corvus, the previous Alpha King's younger brother. She had alpha blood, strong and pure. But she fell in love with your father, a beta from a minor family, someone deemed unsuitable." Alara couldn't speak, couldn't move. They were going to force her to mate with someone else. Someone politically advantageous. Iris's reflection in the window glass looked ancient, tired. "So your parents ran. Lived on the edges of pack territory, hidden. And when you were born, when it became clear you'd inherited your mother's bloodline. They kept me secret," Alara finished, her voice hollow. "They kept you safe." Iris turned back to face her. "Because Alpha King Matthias, Jareth's father, was a paranoid bastard who saw threats everywhere. If he'd known Corvus's line had produced a female alpha heir, especially one outside the main succession, he would have killed me. Or worse, used you. Forced you into a political mating to secure alliances. Iris moved back to the bed, her expression fierce. Your mother spent the last year of her life maintaining a spell to suppress your alpha markers, to make you read as Omega to anyone who tested you. It cost her everything, every ounce of magic, every bit of strength. She died the day the spell finally took permanent hold. Tears streamed down Alara's face before she could stop them. She died for me. She died protecting you. There's a difference. Iris gripped her shoulder, firm and grounding. And now you're doing the same thing, protecting a pack that doesn't even know what you are. Pouring alpha magic into wards that were failing, killing yourself slowly to keep everyone safe. The wards are failing because someone sabotaged them, Alara said, wiping her face roughly. Someone with access to the sacred sites. Someone the guards would never question. Iris's eyes sharpened. Commander Ronan. I can't prove it. I've tried. Alara's hands clenched in the blanket. But I've watched him. Followed him 3 times to the northern boundary. He does something there. I can't get close enough to see what, and afterwards, the wards weaken. So I've been fixing them. Reinforcing them with whatever magic I could channel. You've been killing yourself to cover for a traitor. I've been preventing a civil war. Alara met Iris's eyes. Ronan is beloved. A hero. If I accuse him without proof, the pack will tear itself apart. And with the wards already compromised, the real enemies would strike while we're weak, Iris finished grimly. She was quiet for a long moment. Does the Alpha King know any of this? How could he? I've never spoken to him. Never even been near him until last night. And yet he ordered you brought here instead of to the cells. Stood over you himself while I worked to stabilize you. Iris's expression grew calculating. He recognized something, Alara. I saw it in his face when he carried you in. The memory surfaced again, pale eyes, winter fire, gentle hands pulling her from darkness. There was a raid, Alara said slowly. Years ago. I was a child. Someone saved me. A young warrior. I never knew his name, but he knew yours. Iris smiled, sad and knowing. Jareth has always had a gift for sense. For remembering. If he saved you once, he'd recognize you anywhere, suppression spell or not. A sharp knock on the door cut off whatever Alara might have said. The door opened before either of them could respond, and Maya stepped through, her expression tight. He wants to see her. Now. She's not ready, Iris started. I don't care what she's ready for. The council is in session, and they're calling for immediate execution. Maya's amber eyes found Alara's. The only thing keeping you alive right now is the Alpha King's direct command. But that protection only lasts as long as he can justify it to the pack. Alara pushed herself upright, ignoring the way her ribs screamed. Then I'll go. You can barely stand. I'll go. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, gritting her teeth against the wave of dizziness. If he's protecting me, the least I can do is face him. Maya studied her for a moment, then nodded once. Fine. But if you collapse again, I'm not catching you. Iris helped Alara into a clean dress, simple gray linen, loose enough not to press against her bruises. Every movement was agony, but Alara forced herself through it. Forced herself to breathe, to stand, to walk. She'd survived worse. Liar, her body screamed. You're dying slowly and you know it. But she couldn't stop. Not yet. Not until she found a way to expose Ronan without destroying the pack. Maya led her through corridors Alara had never seen, the inner sanctum of the Alpha's wing, where only the highest-ranked wolves were permitted. The walls here were carved with protection wards so old they hummed with power. Torches burned with flames that never died. They stopped outside a heavy wooden door. Fair warning, Maya said quietly. He's not alone in there. Half the council is with him, and they want blood. Whose blood? Yours, mostly. But they'll settle for chaos. Maya's hand rested on the door handle. Whatever you say in there, make it count. You won't get a second chance. She pushed the door open. The room beyond was smaller than Alara expected, a war room, not a throne room. A massive table dominated the center, maps spread across its surface marked with territorial boundaries and tactical notes. Around it stood 7 wolves, their combined presence enough to make the air feel heavy. And at the head of the table, arms crossed, pale eyes locked on the doorway with an intensity that stole her breath. Alpha King Jareth. He was taller than she remembered, broader through the shoulders, with the kind of contained violence that made predators recognize their better. His dark hair was tied back, revealing a face too young to carry so much authority and too hard to be called anything but dangerous. When his eyes met hers, something flickered across his expression: recognition, confusion, something else she couldn't name. Alara Thorn, he said, his voice low and absolute. You've been accused of treason. Of sabotaging the wards that protect this pack. Of putting every wolf here at risk. Alara lifted her chin, forcing herself to hold his gaze even though every instinct screamed to submit. I know what I'm accused of. Then you also know the punishment for such crimes as death. I do. A murmur ran through the council members. One of them, an older alpha with gray shot through his beard, stepped forward. Alpha King, we've been patient. But this Omega has admitted her guilt. There's no reason to delay justice. Justice, Jareth repeated, not looking away from Alara. Is that what you think this is, Marcus? What else would you call it? A mystery. Jareth moved around the table, each step deliberate. An Omega with no training, no status, no resources, somehow managing to damage wards that have stood for 300 years. Wards that require alpha-level magic to even touch. He stopped directly in front of Alara, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Tell me, Omega, how did you accomplish such a feat? It was a trap. A test. If she claimed she did it, she'd have to explain how, which was impossible for an Omega. If she admitted she couldn't have, she'd implicate someone else. Either way, she lost. Unless... I didn't damage the wards, Alara said clearly. I've been trying to save them. The room exploded. Shouts of disbelief, demands for her immediate execution, accusations of lies piled on treason. But through it all, the Alpha King stood perfectly still, his eyes never leaving hers. Explain, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. So Alara did the only thing she could. She told him the truth. For the past 3 months, Alara began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The northern boundary wards have been weakening. Not naturally. Not from age or weather or simple decay. Lies, Marcus started. Let her speak. The Alpha King's command was absolute. The room fell silent. Alara's ribs ached with every breath, but she forced herself to continue. I noticed it first during the new moon. I was foraging near the northern ridge. She caught the flicker of disdain on several faces at the admission of her low status, and I felt the wards skip, like a heartbeat missing its rhythm. Omegas can't sense boundary magic, another council member said, a woman named Helena with silver threading through her auburn hair. No, Jareth said softly, his eyes still fixed on Alara. They can't. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Alara felt the weight of too many eyes on her, calculating, questioning. She'd just admitted to something impossible. I didn't understand it at first, she continued, pushing forward before anyone could demand an explanation she couldn't give. But I kept returning, kept watching. And 3 weeks ago, I saw someone at the Wardstones. Who? Jareth's voice was dangerously quiet. This was it. The moment that would either save her or condemn her. Alara's eyes found Commander Ronan standing near the far wall, his expression carved from granite. Their gazes locked for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, she saw it. The warning. The threat. If you say my name, I'll destroy you. And everyone you've tried to protect. I couldn't see clearly, she lied, hating herself for it. It was dark. They were careful. But I saw them touch the ward stones with something, a blade, I think. Silver. And where they touched, the magic bled. Impossible, Helena said. The wards are keyed to pack blood. Only Shadowpine wolves can interact with them, and any attempt to damage them would trigger an immediate alert to the Alpha. Unless Maya spoke up from her position by the door, the person doing the damage was someone the wards trusted. Someone with high-level access and authority. Ronan shifted slightly. Are you suggesting a council member is responsible, Beta? I'm suggesting we consider all possibilities. Maya's amber eyes were shrewd. Alara, if you saw someone but couldn't identify them, what did you do? I tried to fix it. Alara's hands clenched at her sides. I knew I couldn't report what I'd seen without proof. Without a clear identification, it would just be my word, and Omega's word, against whoever it was. So I tried to repair the damage. How? Jareth asked, and there was something in his voice now. Something that felt like he already knew the answer. I don't know. It was the truth and a lie all at once. I just reached for the magic. And it reached back. Marcus laughed, sharp and cruel. You expect us to believe that an Omega with no training somehow managed to channel pack magic? That the ancient wards that have protected us for centuries just let you in? I'm not asking you to believe anything, Alara said, meeting his eyes despite the way her wolf instincts screamed to submit. I'm telling you what happened. Every night for 3 months, I've gone to the northern boundary and poured everything I have into those wards. And every time I do, I feel them getting weaker. Because someone with more power, more access, keeps tearing them down faster than I can repair them. This is absurd, another council member said, Thomas, younger than Marcus, but just as dismissive. Even if we believed you could sense the wards, even if we believed you tried to help, you've admitted to repeatedly visiting sacred sites without authorization. That alone is what saved your lives. Every head turned toward the door. Iris stood there, her healer's bag in hand, her expression fierce. I wasn't planning to interrupt, but I won't stand here and listen to you condemn the only wolf who's been keeping this pack from collapse. Healer Iris, Jareth said carefully. What do you mean? Iris walked into the room with the confidence of someone who'd been healing alphas since before most of them were born. She set her bag on the table and pulled out a small vial filled with dark liquid. This is Alara's blood, taken an hour ago. She held it up to the light. Notice anything unusual? Helena leaned closer. It's darker than it should be. It's saturated with pack magic. More specifically, with boundary ward magic. Iris set the vial down carefully. This girl has been channeling power that would kill most trained alphas. She's been doing it alone, repeatedly, while her body slowly breaks down from the strain. Marcus's expression hardened. Or she's been siphoning power from the wards. Using it for her own purposes. To what end? Maya cut in sharply. What purpose would an Omega have for stealing boundary magic? She has no allies, no resources, no political power. If she wanted to hurt this pack, there are far simpler ways. Perhaps she's working for someone, Ronan said smoothly, finally speaking up. His voice was measured, reasonable. Perhaps she was planted here. An agent for another pack, sent to weaken our defenses. Alara's blood ran cold. He was good. So dangerously good at this. If that were true, Jareth said, still watching Alara with that unnerving intensity, why would she collapse before the entire pack? Why not run? Why not hide? Because she got caught, Ronan countered. We've been investigating the ward failures for weeks. Perhaps she knew we were closing in. Then why hasn't she named her supposed masters? Jareth turned to face Ronan, and something flickered in the air between them, something Alara couldn't quite read. If she's an agent, if she's working for someone else, wouldn't she trade that information to save herself? Ronan's jaw tightened. Loyalty. Or fear. Or innocence. Jareth looked back at Alara. There's another explanation. One none of you want to consider. The room held its breath. What if she's telling the truth? Jareth said quietly. What if someone in this pack, someone with power and access, has been systematically destroying our defenses? And what if this Omega, for reasons we don't yet understand, is the only thing standing between us and disaster? That's Marcus started. That's what we're going to find out. Jareth's voice turned to iron. Tonight at moonrise, we're going to the northern boundary. All of us. And Alara is going to show us exactly what she's been doing. Alara's heart stopped. Alpha King. If you're lying, we'll know immediately. The wards don't forgive deception. His pale eyes bored into hers. And if you're telling the truth, then someone in this room is a traitor. And they're going to reveal themselves. Ronan's expression didn't change, but Alara saw his hand drift toward the blade at his hip. Saw the calculation in his eyes. He was going to make his move. Tonight. And if she couldn't prove his guilt before then, they were all going to die. The council dispersed slowly, reluctantly, throwing hostile glances at Alara as they filed out. Only Maya, Iris, Jareth, and Ronan remained. Commander, Jareth said without looking at him. Assemble a security detail. I want the northern boundary locked down by sundown. No one in or out without my direct authorization. Of course. Ronan's voice was smooth as silk. Should I include the Omega in the security protocols? Alara will remain under my personal protection until tonight. The words fell like stones. Ronan's expression flickered, just for a second, before smoothing back into neutrality. As you command, Alpha King. He left, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. The moment he was gone, Alara's legs gave out. She would have hit the floor if Jareth hadn't moved faster than should be possible to catch her. His arms wrapped around her waist, taking her weight effortlessly, and suddenly she was pressed against his chest, breathing in that scent of pine and smoke and wild things. I've got you, he murmured, and the gentleness in his voice was so at odds with the brutal Alpha King everyone feared that Alara almost believed she'd imagined it. I can stand, she said, but her body betrayed her, trembling like a leaf. No, you can't. Jareth lifted her, actually lifted her, and carried her to one of the chairs around the table. He set her down carefully, then crouched in front of her so they were eye level. How long have you been doing this? Truly? Alara met his eyes and saw the warrior from her childhood looking back at her. Saw the boy who'd wrapped her in his cloak and asked her name. 3 months, she whispered. Every night since the ward started failing. And the bruises? His hand moved to her wrist, gentle, turning it to reveal the purple-black marks that disappeared beneath her sleeve. These aren't from channeling magic. She tried to pull away. He didn't let her. Alara. Her name on his lips was a command and a plea all at once. Who's been hurting you? Tell him. Just tell him. But the words stuck in her throat. Because if she told him about Ronan's training sessions, the ones where he'd cornered her in the barracks, where he'd made it clear that any attempt to expose him would result in pain, not just for her, but for anyone who'd ever shown her kindness. If she told him about that, the pack would fracture. And they couldn't afford that. Not now. I'm clumsy, she said instead. I fall a lot. You're lying. Jareth's jaw clenched. And you're terrible at it. Funny. Maya said the same thing. Because it's true. His thumb traced over one of the bruises, featherlight. These are defensive wounds. Someone's been hitting you. Repeatedly. For weeks at least. Tears burned behind her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. The words hung between them, too raw, too honest. Alara couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Why? Because I remember you. Jareth's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. 7 years ago. The raid. You were hiding in a tree, covered in dirt, terrified of everything. I pulled you out and you looked at me like I was some kind of monster. You saved me, Alara said, her throat tight. And then you ran. Something that might have been regret crossed his face. I searched for you. For days. But you'd vanished. I thought. I thought maybe you died. That I'd failed to protect you. Why would you care? I was just. You were a child who'd lost everything. And when I carried you back, when I held you, he paused, his eyes searching hers. You smelled like Puck. Like mine. I didn't understand it then. I was too young, too inexperienced. But I've never forgotten. Alara's world tilted. That's not possible. Your scent is masked. Suppressed by powerful magic. But last night, when you collapsed at my feet, when your defenses were down, Jareth's hand moved from her wrist to cup her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I knew. You're not Omega, Alara. You never were. She couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. Tonight, at the boundary, we're going to prove your innocence, Jareth continued, his voice fierce. And then you're going to tell me everything. Who hurt you? Who forced you into silence? Who made you believe you had to carry this alone? And if I can't prove it? Alara whispered. If the wards don't respond? If I can't show you what I've been doing? Jareth's eyes blazed with something that made her wolf whimper in recognition. Then I'll believe you anyway, he said. Because you're mine to protect. You always have been. I just didn't know it until now. The hours before moonrise crawled by like wounded animals. Jareth had insisted Alara rest, not in the guest quarters this time, but in a smaller room directly adjacent to his own chambers. Maya stood guard outside, her presence a silent promise that no one would get through that door without going through her first. But rest was impossible. Alara lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through every possible outcome of tonight's confrontation. Ronan would be there. He'd have to be. Refusing would raise too much suspicion. Which meant he'd be planning something. He was always planning something. Her ribs ached. Her palm, where Iris had cut her, throbbed despite the healing. And beneath it all, she could feel the pull of the boundary wards, weaker now, fraying at the edges like fabric worn too thin. They were running out of time. A soft knock preceded the door opening. Maya stepped in, carrying a tray with food Alara knew she wouldn't be able to eat. You should try, Maya said, setting it on the side table. Whatever happens tonight, you'll need your strength. I can't. Alara sat up slowly, wincing. My stomach won't. Then drink the tea at least. Iris made it. Says it'll help with the pain and stabilize your magic reserves. Maya poured a cup, the steam rising with the scent of mint and something earthier. She also said to tell you that you're an idiot for doing what you've been doing, but that she's proud of you anyway. Despite everything, Alara smiled. She said idiot? Her exact words were stubborn, self-sacrificing fool with more courage than sense, but I'm paraphrasing. Maya handed her the cup. Drink. The tea was bitter but warm, spreading through her chest like liquid comfort. Alara took several sips before setting it down. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. Why are you helping me? Alara met Maya's amber eyes. You barely know me. I'm accused of treason. The entire pack wants me dead. Yet you're here, standing guard, bringing me tea like we're friends. Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than Alara had ever heard it. 7 years ago, I challenged for Beta. I was young, ambitious, certain I deserved the position. But I was also female in a pack that hadn't had a female Beta in 3 generations. Alara listened, sensing this was important. The male I was challenging, Marcus's son, actually didn't think I had the right to even try. During the combat trial, he didn't just fight to win. He fought to humiliate. To break me. Maya's jaw tightened. He would have succeeded. Would have crippled me, ended my career, made me an example of why women shouldn't reach for power. What stopped him? The Alpha King. Maya's expression softened slightly. Jareth was new to the throne then. Still finding his footing. But he stopped the fight, declared it forfeit, and named me Beta on the spot. Said any wolf who had to break their opponent to win wasn't worthy of the title. She turned to look out the window at the fading afternoon light. The pack was furious. Half of them thought he was being weak. Playing favorites. But Jareth didn't care. He saw something in me that no one else did: potential, strength, loyalty. And he gave me a chance when no one else would. Maya looked back at Alara. So when I see him doing the same thing for you, when I see him protecting someone the entire pack wants to destroy, I remember what that felt like. And I stand with him. Alara's throat tightened. Even if I'm guilty? You're not guilty. Maya's voice was absolute. I've spent enough time around liars to know one when I see one. You're many things, Alara Thorne: secretive, stubborn, far too willing to martyr yourself for people who don't deserve it. But you're not a traitor. How can you be sure? Because traitors look out for themselves. And everything you've done has been about protecting others. Maya crossed her arms. So yes, I'm helping you. And tonight, when we go to those boundaries, I'll be watching your back. You should watch Ronan instead. The words slipped out before Alara could stop them. Maya's eyes sharpened. Why? Because he's the real traitor. Because he's been destroying the wards from the inside. Because he's planning something for tonight that will either expose him or kill us all. But Alara couldn't say any of that. Not without proof. Not without risking everything. Just a feeling, she said instead. Something about him feels wrong. Maya studied her for a long moment. You're still protecting someone. Even now. I'm protecting the pack. No. You're protecting a person. Someone specific. Maya leaned against the wall. And my guess? It's whoever's been hurting you. Alara's hands clenched in the blanket. Here's what I know, Maya continued quietly. Commander Ronan has been requesting private training sessions with low-status pack members for months. Says he's trying to improve overall pack strength. Most alphas think it's noble. Commendable even. Alara's blood turned to ice. But I've noticed something interesting, Maya went on. Every Omega or low-ranked wolf who goes through his training comes back different. Quieter. More withdrawn. And they all have the same kinds of injuries: defensive wounds, stress fractures, bruises in places that suggest restraint. Maya, I couldn't prove anything. Couldn't get anyone to talk. They were all too scared. Maya's amber eyes bored into Alara's. But you know what I'm talking about, don't you? Because you've been through it. Alara wanted to deny it. Wanted to lie like she'd been lying for months. But she was so tired of lying. If I tell you, she whispered, you have to promise me something. What? You can't tell the Alpha King. Not yet. Not until after tonight. Alara met Maya's eyes. Because if you do, if Jareth confronts Ronan before we get to the boundary, Ronan will run. And we'll lose our only chance to prove what he's done. Maya was silent for several heartbeats. You're asking me to keep something from my Alpha. I'm asking you to trust me. Just for a few more hours. Alara's voice cracked. Please. Tell me, Maya said finally. Everything. So I've been protecting the pack, Alara insisted. If the truth comes out wrong, if it causes chaos at the wrong moment, then we do it the right way. Maya moved to the door. Tonight, at the boundary, we expose him with proof that even the council can't deny. We let him reveal himself. And if he doesn't? If he's too careful? Maya's smile was sharp and dangerous. Then I'll make him careless. Moonrise came too quickly. Alara dressed in clothes Maya had brought her: dark leather pants, a fitted tunic, boots that actually fit. Practical clothing. Warrior's clothing. It felt strange on her body after years of loose, shapeless dresses meant to help her disappear. Iris arrived to check her one last time, applying a salve to her ribs that numbed the worst of the pain and wrapping her palm in a thin bandage. Remember, the healer said quietly, you have alpha blood. It's not just about strength, it's about will. The wards will respond to you because they're meant to. Because you have every right to touch them. What if I can't? Alara whispered. What if the magic doesn't come when I need it? Iris gripped her shoulders. It will. Because it's not borrowed power, child. It's yours. It always has been. Your mother just hid it to keep you safe. But hiding is over. A knock at the door. Maya's voice, it's time. Alara's heart hammered as she followed Maya through the corridors. The Alpha's wing was silent, empty except for guards posted at key positions, all of them loyal to Jareth, Maya assured her. They emerged into the courtyard where the others were already assembled. The council members stood in a cluster: Marcus, Helena, Thomas, and 4 others Alara didn't know by name. All of them armed. All of them looking at her like she was something that needed to be put down. Ronan stood slightly apart, his expression neutral, his hand resting casually on his sword hilt. When his eyes met Alara's, she saw the warning there. The threat. One word. One accusation. And I'll make you regret it. Then Jareth stepped out of the shadows, and the entire courtyard seemed to hold its breath. He was dressed for battle, dark armor that moved like liquid, twin blades crossed over his back, his hair loose around his face. But it was his eyes that caught Alara, pale and fierce, and locked on her with an intensity that made her wolf surge forward in recognition. Mine, something in her whispered. He's mine. The thought terrified her. We move as a unit, Jareth said, his voice carrying absolute authority. No one breaks formation. No one acts without my direct command. Understood. A chorus of agreement. Alara. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Stay near me. Whatever happens at the boundary, you're under my protection. Alpha King, I must protest, Marcus started. Your protest is noted and dismissed. Jareth's tone left no room for argument. We're wasting moonlight. Move out. The journey to the northern boundary took 20 minutes at a fast walk. The forest grew darker as they traveled, the trees pressing closer, the sounds of night creatures fading to unnatural silence. Alara felt it the moment they crossed into the boundary zone, the wards recognizing her presence, reaching for her like old friends. But they were weak, so weak. Like spider silk stretched too thin. Here, she said, stopping at a small clearing where 3 ancient stones stood in a triangle. This is where I saw him. Where the damage was worst. Show us, Jareth commanded. Alara approached the stones slowly, her hand outstretched. The moment her fingers touched the central ward stone, magic erupted through her body, hot and wild and desperate. The wards were dying. Not just weakening. Dying. And beneath the fraying magic, she felt something else. Something dark and cold and deliberate. Sabotage. Recent. Within the last few hours. Someone's been here, Alara gasped, her hand still pressed to the stone. Today. They've. The explosion of pain in her back drove her to her knees. She looked down, confused, at the blade protruding from her chest, silver, gleaming with her blood. Behind her, Ronan's voice was cold. I told you what would happen if you spoke. Then he twisted the blade, and Alara's world went black. She came back to consciousness in pieces. Pain first, everywhere, everything, too much to process. Then sound, shouting, the clash of steel, growls that shook the ground. Then sight, blurry, doubled, but gradually clearing. Alara was on her back, the forest canopy spinning above her. The silver blade was gone from her chest, but she could feel the wound, could feel her blood soaking into the earth beneath her. Silver. He used silver. I'm going to die. 20 feet away, Jareth fought Ronan with a fury that belonged in legends. Their swords met in showers of sparks, both of them moving too fast for normal eyes to track. But even from here, even dying, Alara could see what the others couldn't. Ronan was better, faster, stronger. And he wasn't fighting alone. 3 of the council members, Marcus, Thomas, and another, had drawn their weapons against Jareth. Against Maya, who was engaged with Helena. Against the few guards loyal to the Alpha King. This was a coup. Planned, coordinated, inevitable. And Alara had led them all into it. Stay down, Omega, Ronan called out, his sword locked against Jareth's. This will all be over soon. The Alpha King has been weak for too long. Sympathetic to the wrong wolves. Making decisions based on sentiment rather than strength. You're a traitor, Jareth snarled, forcing Ronan back a step. I'm a patriot. I'm saving this pack from your soft rule. Ronan's blade flickered, cutting across Jareth's shoulder, starting with removing threats. Like that Omega who's been snooping where she doesn't belong. Jareth's eyes flashed to Alara, and in that moment of distraction, Ronan struck. The blade should have taken Jareth's head. Instead, it met air. Because Maya had crashed into Ronan from the side, taking them both down in a tangle of limbs and fury. Run! Maya screamed at Alara. The wards! Fix the wards! But Alara couldn't run. Could barely move. The silver poisoning was spreading, turning her blood to fire, her magic to ash. You're dying. You're finally dying, and they're all going to die with you. No. No. Alara pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the wound, feeling the silver working its way toward her heart. She had minutes. Maybe less. But the wards had stood for 300 years. They'd protected countless lives. They were the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. And she was the only one who could save them. One last time. Just one more time. Alara dragged herself toward the nearest ward stone, leaving a trail of blood behind her. Every movement was agony. Every breath felt like her last. But she reached it, pressed both hands against the cold stone, and let everything she was, everything she'd ever been, pour into the wards. The magic responded like lightning striking earth. Power erupted from the stones, blazing through the boundary in waves of pure light. Alara screamed as it tore through her, as it used her as a conduit, as it drew on blood and will and the alpha heritage she'd spent her whole life hiding. The wards didn't just heal. They transformed. Ancient symbols blazed to life across the stones, burning brighter than they had in generations. The barrier reformed, stronger than before, fed by alpha blood that had been denied its birthright for too long. And in that moment, with magic blazing through her veins and her life bleeding into the earth, Alara understood. Her mother hadn't just suppressed her alpha blood to hide her. She'd saved it, compressed it, stored it like a battery waiting to be unleashed. Everything Alara had suffered, every wound, every moment of pain, it had all been preparing her for this. For the moment when she'd be strong enough to channel power that would have killed her as a child. For the moment when she'd have to choose between her life and theirs. The light from the wards grew blinding. Alara felt her heartbeat slowing, felt the silver reaching her core, felt everything starting to fade. But the wards were fixed. Stronger than ever. Unbreakable. I did it, she thought, as darkness closed in. I saved them. Then someone was there, hands on her face, a voice screaming her name. Alara. No, stay with me. Stay with me. Jareth. She tried to smile, to tell him it was okay, that she'd fixed it. But the words wouldn't come. And the darkness swallowed her whole. Death, Alara discovered, was quieter than she'd expected. No tunnel of light. No voice of the goddess welcoming her home. Just silence, vast and empty and surprisingly peaceful. She floated in it, weightless, wondering if this was all there was. If after everything, all the pain, all the sacrifice, all the desperate fighting to keep others safe, this nothingness was her reward. Then she heard the heartbeat. Not hers. That had stopped, hadn't it? She remembered the silver reaching her heart, remembered the final flutter before everything went dark. But this heartbeat was strong, steady, insistent. And it was calling to her. Come back. Come back. Come back. Alara tried to move toward it, tried to follow that rhythm, but something held her suspended in the void. Something cold wrapped around her essence, tightening like chains. The silver. Still poisoning her. Even here, wherever here was. Let go, a voice whispered, her own voice, tired and resigned. You've done enough. Rest now. The heartbeat faltered. No, not faltered. Broke. She heard it, the sound of someone shattering. The kind of grief that had no words, that could only be expressed in the raw animal sounds of a soul being torn apart. Please. Jareth's voice, ragged and desperate. Please don't leave me. Not again. Not when I just found you. Jareth. Something in Alara's chest, or wherever her chest should be, clenched. I searched for you for 7 years, he continued, and she could hear him crying now, could hear the way his voice broke on every word. 7 years wondering if you'd survived. If you'd found safety somewhere. And when I recognized your scent last night, when I realized you'd been here all along, suffering alone. His hand, she could feel it now, warm against her cold skin, cupped her face. I swore I'd protect you. I swore the moment I pulled you from that tree that I'd never let anything hurt you again. And I failed. A sound that might have been a sob. I failed you. No, you didn't fail. I chose this. I chose to save them. But the words wouldn't form. The darkness held her too tight. Alpha King. Iris's voice, gentler than Alara had ever heard it. She's gone. The silver reached her heart. Even Alpha healing can't. I don't care what's possible. Jareth's voice turned feral. There has to be a way. Blood magic. A bonding. Something. Blood magic is forbidden. And a bonding requires consent from both parties. She's my mate. The words exploded from him like a confession torn free. I've known since the moment I saw her again. Since I caught her scent beneath all those suppression spells. She's mine and I will not let her go. Silence. Then Maya's voice, carefully neutral. Alpha King, are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Then there might be a way. Iris's tone shifted, became clinical. An alpha bond can share life force. If you're truly mates, if the mate bond is genuine, you could anchor her soul. Keep it from drifting while we purge the silver. Tell me what to do. It will hurt. Both of you. The silver in her system will fight against your magic. And if the bond isn't strong enough, Iris paused. It could kill you both. I don't care. Jareth, Maya tried. I don't care. Each word was absolute. Tell me what to do. The first touch of his magic was like fire against ice. Alara felt it surge through the darkness, felt it wrap around her essence like arms pulling her from deep water. But the silver fought back, tightening its grip, sending spikes of agony through her consciousness. Let me go, she tried to tell him. It hurts. It hurts so much. I know, Jareth's voice came through the pain. I know it hurts. But you have to hold on. You have to fight. His power flooded into her too much, overwhelming, like trying to contain an ocean in a cup. But beneath the intensity, she felt something else. Something that resonated in the deepest part of her. Recognition. The mate bond awakening. It wasn't gentle. Wasn't the romantic fairy tale the older wolves told pups around fires. It was raw and primal and absolutely certain, a truth written into their very souls. Mine, the bond whispered. You're mine and I'm yours and nothing, not death, not silver, not fate itself, will separate us. The silver screamed as Jareth's power began burning it away. Alara screamed with it, feeling every molecule of poison being torn from her body, feeling her heart struggle to remember how to beat. Stay with me, Jareth commanded, and there was alpha power in his voice now, the kind that made reality bend. Your alpha commands it. Live. Her heart lurched. Stuttered. Caught. Beat. Another beat. Another. The darkness began to recede, color bleeding back into existence. Sensation returning in waves, pain first, always pain, but beneath it something warm and fierce and unbreakable. The bond. Fully formed. Blazing between them like a second sun. Alara gasped and her eyes flew open. She was still in the clearing, still surrounded by ward stones that now glowed with steady light. But the sky above had changed, no longer deep night, but the pale gray of approaching dawn. How long had she been gone? Alara. Jareth's face appeared above hers, and he looked wrecked. Pale, haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. But alive. And looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. You're alive, she whispered, her voice like broken glass. I'm alive. His laugh was half sob. You died. Your heart stopped. I felt it through the bond, felt you slipping away. Bond? The word triggered memory. The mate bond. Forming. Completing. You bonded us. I saved you. His hand cupped her face, trembling. The only way I knew how. Without asking. You were dead. I didn't have time for asking. His jaw clenched. And I'd do it again. I'll always do it again. I'm not losing you. Alara should have been angry. Should have felt violated, trapped, claimed without consent. But all she felt, flooding through the new bond between them, was his utter sincerity. His desperate fear. His overwhelming relief that she was breathing. And beneath it all, the truth neither of them could deny. He was her mate. She'd probably known it somewhere deep down since he'd caught her. Since his scent had made her wolf whimper in recognition. Since his touch had felt like coming home. Ronan, she said suddenly, trying to sit up. Pain exploded through her chest and she cried out. Don't move. Jareth supported her carefully, his arm around her shoulders. The silver's gone, but you're still healing. And Ronan, his expression darkened. Ronan is contained. Alara looked past him and saw what he meant. 20 feet away, Commander Ronan knelt in the dirt, his hands bound behind him with silver chains. His face was bloody, one eye swollen shut, and Maya stood behind him with a sword pressed to his neck. 3 other council members knelt beside him, Marcus, Thomas, and a woman Alara didn't recognize. All bound. All defeated. They confessed, Maya said, her voice hard. Once it became clear they'd lost. Ronan's been working with the Night Fang pack for months. Planning to weaken our wards, assassinate the Alpha King during the confusion, and claim the throne himself. The Night Fang would have attacked the moment our defenses failed, Iris added from where she knelt nearby, packing away her healing supplies. It would have been a slaughter. You stopped them, Jareth said quietly, his eyes never leaving Alara's face. By fixing the wards. By pouring your alpha blood into them. You saved every life in this pack. I almost died doing it. Yes. His voice went rough. You almost died. And in the process, you revealed exactly what you are. There's no hiding it now, Alara. Every wolf here felt that surge of alpha power. They all know. Fear spiked through her. The pack, said a new voice, owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Alara turned to see Helena kneeling several feet away, her head bowed in submission. Behind her, the 4 other council members who'd remained loyal to Jareth did the same. You protected us when you had no reason to, Helena continued. You suffered torture and accusations and near death, all to keep us safe from a threat we didn't even know existed. She looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I called you Omega. Called you weak. I was wrong. And I am sorry. One by one, the other council members echoed her apology. Alara couldn't speak. Couldn't process what was happening. The rest of the pack will follow, Jareth said softly. Once word spreads of what you did. Of what you are. What I am. Alara's voice cracked. I'm nobody. A hidden bloodline. An accident. You're Alpha. Jareth's voice was absolute. Daughter of Corvus's line. Bearer of ancient blood. And as of approximately 3 hours ago, he paused, something that might have been nervousness crossing his face. You're my mate. My bonded mate. Which makes you. No, Alara tried to pull away, panic rising. No, I can't be. Luna, Maya finished, her tone almost amused despite the circumstances. You're the Luna of Shadow Pine Pack now. Congratulations. The world tilted again. Luna. The Alpha King's mate and equal. Second only to him in authority and power. She'd gone from invisible Omega to Luna in the span of one night. It was too much. All of it was too much. I need, Alara gasped, her chest tightening. I can't breathe. I need. Everyone out. Jareth's command was instant. Give us the clearing. Now. Maya hesitated. Alpha King, the prisoners. Can wait 10 minutes. Out. All of you. They left quickly, Maya hauling Ronan to his feet, the council members following, Iris gathering her supplies. Within moments, Alara and Jareth were alone in the clearing, surrounded only by the glowing ward stones and the first light of dawn. Look at me, Jareth said gently, turning her face toward his. Breathe with me. In and out. That's it. Again. She followed his rhythm, feeling her panic slowly recede. The bond between them pulsed with his calm, his certainty, his absolute conviction that everything would be okay. I know this is overwhelming, he said once her breathing had steadied. I know you didn't ask for any of this. The bond, the title, the sudden change in status. And if I could have asked first, if there had been any other way to save you, I would have taken it. But you didn't. The words came out harsher than she'd intended. No, I didn't. He met her eyes without flinching. I made a choice in a moment of crisis. I claimed you as mine without your consent because the alternative was watching you die. And I won't apologize for that, Alara. I won't apologize for doing whatever it took to keep you alive. Even though it means I'm trapped now, bound to you forever. Something flashed across his face, hurt, quickly masked. Is that what you think? That you're trapped? Aren't I? Alara gestured helplessly at the space between them where the bond thrummed like a living thing. Mate bonds can't be broken. Not without killing both parties. So yes, I'm trapped. Jareth was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully neutral. The bond can be managed. Kept dormant. We'd still be mates, still tied together, but we wouldn't have to act on it. You could live your own life. Choose your own path. I wouldn't, he swallowed hard. I wouldn't force anything on you that you didn't want. The bond between them ached suddenly, and Alara realized with a start that she could feel his emotions as clearly as her own. The longing, the hope, the fear that she'd reject him completely. And beneath it all, the bone-deep certainty that she was his mate. His true mate. The one he'd been waiting for his entire life. Why me? She whispered. You're the Alpha King. You could have anyone. Why bond yourself to someone like me? Someone like you? Jareth's expression turned fierce. You mean someone brave enough to face torture rather than cause a civil war? Someone strong enough to channel power that would kill most alphas? Someone selfless enough to nearly die protecting a pack that had given her nothing but pain. His hands framed her face, gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. I recognized you 7 years ago, Alara. When I pulled you from that tree. Something in me knew, even though I was too young to understand what it meant. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I searched for you because my soul was already searching for its mate. And when I found you again, when I recognized your scent beneath all those suppression spells, he leaned his forehead against hers. It wasn't a choice, he said softly. It was inevitable. You've always been mine. I've always been yours. The bond just made it official. Tears spilled down Alara's cheeks. I don't know how to be Luna. I don't know how to be anything except invisible. Then we'll figure it out together. Jareth pulled back slightly, his pale eyes searching hers. But first, you need to heal. Really heal. Not just from the silver, but from everything Ronan did to you. Everything the pack put you through. And then we deal with the traitors. Secure the borders. Start rebuilding trust. He paused. And somewhere in all of that, if you're willing, we get to know each other. As mates. As partners. As equals. Equals. Alara almost laughed. I'm nobody. You're alpha blood. Luna of this pack. My mate. Jareth's voice was absolute. You're my equal in every way that matters. And anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me. The bond flared between them, warm and certain, and for the first time since waking, Alara felt something other than panic. She felt possible. Like maybe, just maybe, she could be more than the invisible Omega who suffered in silence. Like maybe she could be someone worth saving. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Jareth's expression was cautiously hopeful. Okay, we'll figure it out together. She managed a small smile. But if I collapse again, you're carrying me. The relief that flooded through him, through the bond, was so powerful it made her gasp. Then he was pulling her carefully into his arms, holding her like she was something precious and breakable and infinitely valuable. I'll always carry you, he murmured against her hair. For as long as you need me to. And wrapped in his embrace, with dawn breaking over the forest and the wards glowing steady around them, Alara finally let herself believe it might be true. The walk back to the pack center took twice as long as it should have. Jareth had wanted to carry Alara, insisted on it, actually, but she'd refused. She needed to walk on her own feet. Needed the pack to see her standing, even if every step felt like her bones were grinding together. The bond hummed between them, and she could feel his concern, his desire to help. But he honored her choice, staying close enough to catch her if she fell, but letting her move under her own power. Maya led the procession with the prisoners in silver chains, Ronan at the front, his face a mask of barely contained rage. Behind them came the loyal council members, then the guards who'd fought on Jareth's side. They walked in silence, the only sounds the crunch of leaves underfoot and the distant calls of mourning birds. As they emerged from the forest, Alara saw the entire pack waiting. Hundreds of wolves lined the path from the tree line to the grand hall, standing in complete silence. Word had spread somehow about the battle, the betrayal, the explosion of alpha power that had shaken the very foundations of their territory. Alara's steps faltered. You can do this, Jareth said softly beside her. They need to see you. They hate me. They feared you. There's a difference. His hand found hers, warm and grounding. And fear can become respect. Trust me. The crowd parted as they approached, creating a corridor. Alara could feel their eyes on her, assessing, calculating, wondering. She kept her chin up, kept walking, even as whispers followed in her wake. Is it true? Alpha blood. She fixed the wards. Saved us all. But she's Omega. How's that possible? The Alpha King bonded her. She's Luna now. Luna. The word rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. Halfway to the hall, an elderly wolf stepped forward, bent with age, his muzzle gray, but his eyes sharp. Alara recognized him, Elder Tobias, one of the oldest wolves in the pack, someone who'd known her mother. He knelt. The gesture was so unexpected that Alara stopped walking. Then, like dominoes falling, the wolves around him began dropping to their knees. One, then 5, then dozens, until the entire crowd was bowing before her. Luna, Elder Tobias said, his voice carrying. We have wronged you. Accused you falsely. Allowed you to suffer when you deserved our protection. He looked up, his eyes glistening. Your mother would be proud of what you've become. Of what you've endured to keep us safe. Alara's throat closed. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Rise, Jareth commanded gently. All of you. Your Luna stands before you wounded and weary. Show her respect by standing with her, not beneath her. They rose as one, and in their eyes Alara saw something she'd never seen before. Acceptance. Not just tolerance. Not just acknowledgement. True acceptance of who and what she was. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like grief for all the years she'd spent invisible, for all the suffering that could have been prevented if someone had just looked at her. But she pushed the grief down, locked it away with all the other things she'd learned to carry silently. There would be time for feeling later. Right now, she had to be strong. She had to be Luna. The grand hall was packed with every wolf of rank, all of them standing in tense silence as Ronan and his conspirators were brought before the throne. Jareth took his seat, and after a moment's hesitation, Alara took the seat beside him, the Luna's seat, carved from the same blackwood, wrapped in furs of silver gray. It felt wrong. Too big, too important, too much. But when Jareth's hand covered hers on the armrest, when his calm flooded through their bond, she found the strength to sit straight, to meet the eyes of the assembled pack without flinching. Commander Ronan, Jareth's voice echoed through the hall. You stand accused of treason, conspiracy, attempted murder, and sabotage of sacred wards. How do you answer?" Ronan lifted his head, blood still crusted on his face, but his expression was defiant. "I answer that I did what was necessary. What someone had to do." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Explain," Jareth commanded. "You've made this pack weak." Ronan's voice rang with conviction. "Soft. You give power to females who haven't earned it." His eyes flicked to Maya. "You show mercy to those who deserve death." A look at Alara. "You prioritize sentiment over strength, compassion over victory." "So you betrayed us to the Night Fong," Jareth said, his tone deadly calm. "Weakened our defenses. Planned my assassination. All because you disagreed with my leadership. I tried to save us from your weakness." Ronan snarled. "The Night Fong promised alliance, not conquest. Promised to make Shadowpine strong again under proper Alpha rule. Under your rule." Maya's voice cut across his. "Let's not dress it up, Ronan. You wanted the throne. And you were willing to sell out your entire pack to get it. I would have been a better Alpha King. You would have been a tyrant." The voice came from the crowd, Elder Tobias, stepping forward. "I've lived under 3 Alpha Kings, Ronan. I know the difference between strength and cruelty, between leadership and domination." He looked at Jareth. "This young Alpha has brought our pack further in 7 years than his father did in 30. And you," he turned back to Ronan, "you're nothing but a traitor wrapped in false righteousness." Agreement rumbled through the hall. Ronan's face twisted with rage. "You're all blind. Can't you see what he's done? He's bonded an Omega. She's not Omega." Iris stepped forward, her healer's bag in hand. "I tested her blood myself. Alara carries the bloodline of Alpha Corvus, direct descent, stronger than any Alpha born in this pack in 3 generations." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. "Her mother suppressed her markers to protect her," Iris continued. "But the blood doesn't lie. Alara is Alpha born, Alpha blood, Alpha power." She turned to face the crowd. "And she's proven it. How many of you felt her magic last night? Felt the wards surge with power we haven't seen in decades?" Dozens of heads nodded. "She channeled enough power to kill a dozen trained alphas," Iris said firmly. "Survived silver poisoning that should have ended her in minutes. And she did it all to protect a pack that had given her nothing but suffering." Her eyes swept the assembly. "If that's not worthy of being Luna, then I don't know what is." Silence fell, heavy, contemplative. Then Helena stood from her council seat. "I call for judgment. The accused have confessed. The evidence is clear. We need decisive action." "Agreed," said another council member. Then another. Until all the remaining loyal wolves were calling for justice. Jareth looked at Alara, and she felt the question through their bond. "What do you want?" She could have called for death. Could have demanded the same brutality Ronan had shown her, months of torture repaid in blood. Part of her wanted to. But a larger part, the part that had endured all that pain specifically to prevent more violence, knew that wasn't the answer. "I want the truth," Alara said, her voice carrying despite its softness. "All of it. Names of every conspirator. Details of the Night Fong alliance. Everything." Ronan's laugh was bitter. "You think I'll betray my allies?" "I think you'll do whatever keeps you alive." Maya stepped closer to him, her amber eyes cold. "Because the alternative to cooperation is execution. Public, immediate, and absolute. Your choice." For a long moment, Ronan said nothing. Then his shoulders slumped. "There are 5 others," he said finally. "For in this pack, all arrested. The 5th," he looked up, his eyes finding someone in the crowd, "is standing right there." Every head turned. A young warrior, Dane, Alara remembered, barely 20 years old, stood frozen, his face draining of color. "I'm sorry," Dane whispered, and then he bolted. He made it 3 steps before Maya caught him, tackling him to the ground with brutal efficiency. 2 guards dragged him up, holding him as he struggled. "The Night Fong promised me rank," Dane said desperately, tears streaming down his face. Position. I'm lowborn, no status, no future. So you sold out your pack. Maya's voice was disgusted. For rank. I didn't think anyone would really get hurt. I passed information, that's all. Patrol schedules, guard rotations. Information that would have let them slaughter us in our sleep, Jareth said coldly. He stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Any other conspirators? Anyone else who wants to confess before we start investigating more thoroughly? Silence. Good. Jareth's pale eyes swept the assembly. Then here's my judgment. Ronan, Marcus, Thomas, and the other primary conspirators, you are stripped of rank, stripped of pack status, and sentenced to execution at sundown. Ronan's face went white. You can't. I can. And I will. Jareth's voice was absolute. You betrayed not just me, but every wolf in this pack. You tortured Luna Alara. You worked with our enemies. And you did it all for personal gain. He leaned forward slightly. There is no mercy for traitors. And Dane? Maya asked, still holding the young wolf. Jareth looked at the warrior, barely more than a boy, really, his face streaked with tears and terror. Dane committed treason, yes. But he was manipulated by someone older, more experienced, more cunning. So his sentence is different. Hope flickered in Dane's eyes. Exile, Jareth said flatly. Effective immediately. You have until sundown to leave our territory. If you're found within our borders after that, the sentence becomes death. Understood. Dane nodded frantically. Yes. Yes, Alpha King. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank your Luna. Jareth looked at Alara. She's the reason I'm showing you any mercy at all. Alara hadn't said anything, hadn't advocated for leniency. But through the bond, she realized Jareth had felt her conflict, her desire for justice balanced against her hatred of unnecessary death. He'd given her what she wanted without her having to ask. Thank you, she sent through their bond. Always came his response, warm and certain. Maya hauled Dane toward the door. You have 10 minutes to gather your things. Then you run and you don't look back. Clear. Dane stumbled out, and Maya followed to ensure he complied. Jareth turned back to address the remaining assembly. This pack has been wounded. Betrayed from within. It will take time to heal, to rebuild trust. His gaze swept across faces both familiar and new. But we will heal. We will become stronger. And anyone who threatens us again will learn exactly why Shadowpine has survived for 300 years. Alpha King, Elder Tobias said. What of the Luna? How do we proceed? It was a fair question. Alara had gone from invisible Omega to Luna in one night. There were protocols, traditions, ceremonies that were supposed to happen. Luna Alara will be formally recognized at the next full moon, Jareth said. Until then, she has my full authority to act in my name. Any disrespect shown to her is disrespect shown to me. Any harm attempted against her is an act of treason. Understood. A chorus of yes, Alpha King, echoed through the hall. Good. Council members remain. Everyone else dismissed. The hall emptied slowly, wolves filing out with backward glances at Alara. She could feel their curiosity, their uncertainty, their carefully masked fear. They don't know what to make of me, she sent to Jareth. They will, he replied. Give them time. Once only the council remained 6 loyal members now, with 4 executed or awaiting execution. Jareth finally allowed his composure to crack slightly. That, he said, sinking back into his throne, was exhausting. Welcome to leadership, Helena said dryly. Then she looked at Alara. Luna, may I speak plainly? Alara nodded, uncertain where this was going. I owe you an apology. A real one, not just words in front of the pack. Helena's expression was earnest. I called for your execution. Called you a traitor. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. We were all wrong, another council member said. Jacob, Alara remembered. We let our assumptions blind us. Let our prejudices against Omegas, he caught himself, against wolves of low rank make us cruel. You don't need to apologize, Alara said quietly. You were protecting the pack. You didn't know. We should have known, Elder Tobias cut in gently. Should have questioned more, investigated deeper. Should have noticed that a young Omega was appearing with more injuries every week. His eyes were sad. We failed you, child. All of us. And I hope, in time, you can forgive us. Alara's vision blurred. She'd spent so long expecting nothing but dismissal, cruelty, invisibility. Having them acknowledge their failure, apologize for it, it broke something in her that had been holding strong through pure will. The tears came before she could stop them. Jareth was there instantly, his arms around her, pulling her against his chest. It's all right, he murmured. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to break down. You've earned it. I'm sorry, she gasped against his armor. I should be stronger. You're the strongest person I know. He tilted her face up, his thumbs wiping away her tears. But strength doesn't mean never breaking. It means letting yourself break and then choosing to keep going. Through her tears, Alara saw the council members looking away, giving them privacy despite being in the same room. Saw the respect in their averted gazes, the acceptance of her vulnerability as strength rather than weakness. Maybe, she thought, maybe this could work. Maybe she could be Luna. Maybe she could be loved. Come on, Jareth said softly, helping her stand. You need rest. Real rest. And food. And about 12 hours of sleep. The executions will happen with or without you there. His voice was firm. You've done enough, Alara. More than enough. Let me handle the rest. Together, she said, finding her voice. We handle it together. That's what you said, right? Equal partners. Something fierce and proud blazed in his eyes. Together, he agreed. And hand in hand, they left the hall. The executions were set for sundown. Alara stood on the balcony outside Jareth's chambers, their chambers now, she supposed, watching the sun sink toward the horizon in streaks of orange and gold. Below, in the main courtyard, preparations were underway. The execution platform, the gathered pack, the solemn ritual of justice being served. She should have felt satisfaction. Ronan and his conspirators were finally facing consequences for their betrayal, their cruelty, their willingness to sacrifice innocent lives for power. Instead, she just felt tired. You don't have to watch, Jareth said from the doorway behind her. She felt him through the bond before she heard him concern, understanding, and something darker. The grim determination of an alpha who had to protect his pack, no matter the cost. Yes, I do. Alara didn't turn around. They need to see me there. See that I'm not hiding. They already know you're strong. Do they? She finally looked at him. He changed from his battle-worn armor into formal attire, black leather and fur, the ceremonial blade of the Alpha King strapped across his back. He looked every inch the ruler he was. Or do they just know I can channel magic and that you've claimed me as mate? Jareth crossed the balcony in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. They know you're strong because you're standing here at all. Because you survived months of torture and still chose to save the wolves who hurt you. His hand cupped her face. That's not magic, Alara. That's character. She leaned into his touch, drawing strength from the bond between them. It still felt new, raw, like a wound that hadn't quite healed. But it also felt right in a way she couldn't explain. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. About the night I collapsed. About why I really kept silent. You don't have to. I do. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. You deserve to know the whole truth. Why I protected Ronan for so long. Jareth was quiet, waiting. It wasn't just about preventing civil war, Alara continued. That was part of it, yes. But the real reason, she swallowed hard. He told me that if I exposed him, he wouldn't just kill me. He'd target Iris first. Then the young wolves who'd shown me kindness. He'd make it look like accidents. And I knew he could do it. That he had the access, the authority, the cunning. Jareth's expression darkened dangerously. So I made a choice, Alara said. I let him hurt me instead. Figured if he was focused on tormenting me, he'd leave everyone else alone. And as long as I could keep reinforcing the wards, as long as I could buy time to find proof against him, she shrugged helplessly. I thought I could handle it. You thought you could sacrifice yourself to protect others. Jareth's voice was rough. Even though those others had never protected you, they didn't deserve to die for my choices. And you didn't deserve to suffer for theirs. He pulled her close again, his arms tight around her. Promise me something. What? Promise me you'll never do that again. Never sacrifice yourself. Never stay silent about someone hurting you. Never carry that kind of weight alone. His breath was warm against her hair. We're bonded now. Your pain is my pain. And I can't, his voice cracked slightly. I can't survive losing you. Not now that I've found you. Elara felt the truth of it through their bond. The depth of his fear when she died, the desperation that had driven him to bond them without permission. The way her suffering tore at him like physical wounds. I promise, she whispered. No more secrets. No more silent suffering. Good. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Now come. It's time. The entire pack had gathered in the courtyard, hundreds of wolves standing in perfect silence as Jareth and Elara descended the steps from the grand hall. The execution platform stood in the center, dark wood-stained with the blood of past judgments. Ronan and his 3 co-conspirators were already there, bound in silver chains, forced to their knees. Maya stood guard along with 6 of the strongest warriors, her expression cold and unforgiving. Elara felt every eye on her as she took her place beside Jareth on the elevated platform reserved for the Alpha King and Luna. The Luna's position. She was supposed to witness this, to show the pack that justice was being served with her approval. But when her eyes met Ronan's across the distance, she saw no remorse. Only hatred, pure and burning. Commander Ronan, Jareth's voice rang out across the courtyard. You have been found guilty of treason, conspiracy, attempted murder, and crimes against your Luna. Do you have any final words? Ronan laughed, a broken, bitter sound. Final words? What would be the point? You've already decided my fate. You and that Omega pretending to be Luna. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, angry, defensive of their new Luna. She's more Luna than you are Alpha, someone called out. Elara turned and saw it was one of the younger warriors, a woman named Kayla who Ronan had trained months ago. Luna Elara suffered your torture and never broke. She saved us all while you tried to destroy us. If anyone's pretending here, it's you, pretending you were ever worthy of command. Agreement rumbled through the assembled wolves. Ronan's face twisted with rage. You're all fools. This pack is doomed under weak leadership. The Night Fong will still come. The Night Fong won't come. The voice came from the back of the crowd, and wolves parted to let Maya through. She was dragging someone, a man Elara didn't recognize, bloodied and bound. Because we caught their scout an hour ago. Seems they were watching the execution, planning to report back to their Alpha. She threw the man down at the base of the platform. Tell them, Maya commanded. Tell them what you told me. The scout, clearly Naifong by his scent, looked up with frightened eyes. The alliance is broken. When Commander Ronan failed to kill your Alpha King, when the wards became stronger instead of weaker, my Alpha called off the attack. Said Shadowpine wasn't worth the losses we'd take. Silence fell like snow. So your grand plan failed, Jareth said coldly, looking down at Ronan. You betrayed your pack, tortured your Luna, destroyed your honor, all for an alliance that fell apart the moment you showed weakness. Ronan said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Then let justice be done. Jareth drew the ceremonial blade from his back, ancient silver, inscribed with the names of every Alpha King who'd wielded it. By the authority granted to me as Alpha King of Shadowpine, by the laws that have governed this pack for 300 years, I sentence you to death. Immediately. Finally. Absolutely. He descended the platform steps, the blade gleaming in the fading sunlight. But before he could reach Ronan, Elara spoke. Wait. Every head turned toward her. Jareth stopped, his expression questioning through their bond. Alara stood, her legs steadier than they'd been hours ago, her voice carrying across the silent courtyard. Ronan. Look at me. He did, his hatred blazing. You called me weak, Alara said. You called me Omega. You tortured me, threatened me, tried to break me in every way possible. She descended the steps slowly until she stood directly in front of him. And you failed. I'm still here. Still standing. And you're the one on your knees. Ronan's jaw clenched. I could ask for the honor of executing you myself, Alara continued. Could make you suffer the way you made me suffer. Could show you exactly what happens when an Omega decides to stop holding back. She felt the pack's anticipation, felt them waiting for her vengeance. But I won't. Alara's voice softened. Because that would make me like you. And I'd rather die than become that. She turned to Jareth. End it quickly. Cleanly. He's not worth the extra suffering. Jareth's eyes blazed with pride and love through their bond. He moved forward, and with one swift stroke, ended Ronan's life. The other 3 conspirators followed quickly, Marcus, Thomas, and the third. No speeches, no dramatics. Just justice, swift and final. When it was done, when the blood had been spilled and the bodies removed, Jareth turned to address the pack. Let this be a warning to any who would betray Shadowpine, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the courtyard. Treason will not be tolerated. Betrayal will not be forgiven. But his eyes found Alara's. Mercy can still be earned. Loyalty will be rewarded. And strength comes not from cruelty, but from choosing compassion even when vengeance would be easier. He extended his hand to Alara, and she took it, standing beside him as equals. Your Luna has shown us what true strength looks like, Jareth continued. She endured torture to protect you. Nearly died to save you. And when given the chance for revenge, she chose mercy instead. His voice grew fierce. She is worthy of your loyalty, your respect, your protection. And anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me. Luna. 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 The chant started with Kayla, spread to the other young warriors, then rippled through the entire pack until hundreds of voices were calling Alara's name in unity. She couldn't speak, could barely breathe, could only stand there, hand clasped in Jareth's, and accept what she'd never thought possible. Acceptance. Belonging. Home. Later that night, after the ceremonies were complete and the pack had dispersed, Alara found herself back in Jareth's chambers, their chambers now. She stood before a mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. Same face, same eyes, but everything else was different. She wore Luna's colors now, silver and black. Her hair had been washed and braided with tiny crystals that caught the candlelight. The bruises were fading, healing faster than normal thanks to her awakened alpha blood. She looked powerful. Second thoughts. Jareth's voice came from the doorway. Alara turned to find him watching her, his formal attire discarded for simple sleep clothes. He looked younger like this, less alpha king and more just. Jareth. The boy who'd saved her from a tree. The man who'd refused to let her die. No second thoughts, she said. Just processing. Yesterday I was invisible. Today I'm Luna. It's a lot. It is. He crossed to her, his hands settling on her shoulders. And you don't have to have all the answers right now. We'll figure it out together. One day at a time. Together, she echoed, turning in his arms. I like the sound of that. Good. Because you're stuck with me now. His smile was teasing, but his eyes were serious. The mate bond is permanent, Alara. No take-backs. Would you want to take back? She asked quietly. If you could? You bonded me in crisis, without really thinking. I've thought about bonding you since the moment I recognized your scent. Jareth's hands framed her face. Maybe I didn't do it in the traditional way, with ceremonies and courtship and time to know each other. But the bond itself? That was always inevitable. You're mine, Alara. You always have been. Yours, she repeated, testing the word. It should have felt like a cage. Instead, it felt like freedom, freedom to stop hiding, stop running, stop pretending to be less than she was. And I'm yours, Jareth said. Equally. Absolutely. Forever. The bond between them flared, warm and certain, and Alara finally, let herself believe it. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't weak. She wasn't alone. She was Luna. She was loved. She was home. Forever, then, she whispered, and kissed him. The bond sang between them as their lips met, a symphony of recognition, acceptance, and love that had been building since a young warrior pulled a frightened girl from a tree 7 years ago. Some bonds, Alara realized, were written in the stars long before you knew to look for them. This was one of those bonds. And she wasn't letting go. 3 months later, the full moon hung heavy and silver over Shadowpine territory, casting everything in its ethereal glow. Alara stood at the edge of the northern boundary, her hand resting on the ward stone that had nearly killed her, and marveled at how much had changed. The wards hummed beneath her palm, strong, steady, unbreakable. She'd reinforced them properly now, with a team of trained alphas working alongside her. No more desperate midnight rituals, no more pouring herself out until there was nothing left. Now she had support, resources, and most importantly, she had permission to use the power that had always been hers. You're thinking too loud. Alara smiled as Jareth's arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. Even after 3 months of being bonded, the simple comfort of his touch still made her heart skip. Just remembering, she said, leaning into him. The last time I was here, I was dying. Don't. His arms tightened. Don't think about that. I have to sometimes. To remember how far I've come. She turned in his embrace, looking up at him. How far we've come. It was true. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of change, some wonderful, some challenging, all of it necessary. The pack had accepted her as Luna with surprising grace once they understood the full truth. Iris had shared the story of her mother's sacrifice, of the suppression spell that had hidden Alara's true nature for so long. Elder Tobias had confirmed that Corvus's line had always been strong, that alpha blood ran true even through generations. There had been doubters, of course. Wolves who struggled to see past the Omega they'd dismissed for years. But slowly, through patient leadership and quiet strength, Alara had won them over. It helped that she'd implemented changes the pack desperately needed. How did the training session go today? Jareth asked, as if reading her thoughts. Kayla is progressing beautifully. So are the others. Alara smiled, thinking of the young Omega females she'd been working with, teaching them self-defense, helping them understand that low rank didn't mean powerless. 3 of them are already showing enough skill to qualify for warrior training. Maya says she'll sponsor them. Maya's been a good ally. Maya's been amazing. Alara's voice was warm. The beta had become not just an ally, but a true friend, someone who understood the challenges of being female in positions of power, who pushed Alara to be better, while also supporting her completely. They'd worked together to restructure the pack's hierarchy, creating opportunities for wolves of all ranks to prove themselves. It wasn't perfect yet. Centuries of tradition didn't change overnight, but it was progress. The council wants to discuss border patrol schedules tomorrow, Jareth said, his tone shifting to business. And we received a diplomatic request from the Silvercrest pack. Their alpha wants to discuss a potential alliance. An alliance? Alara raised an eyebrow. After what happened with Nightfang? Because of what happened with Nightfang. Word has spread about how we handled the betrayal, about our new Luna. Jareth's eyes gleamed with pride. Other packs are taking notice. Some with respect, some with suspicion, but all of them paying attention. Alara had learned that being Luna meant more than just standing beside the Alpha King. It meant strategy meetings and diplomatic correspondence. It meant mediating disputes and making decisions that affected hundreds of lives. It meant being visible, strong, present, everything she'd never been allowed to be before. It was exhausting. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. Speaking of taking notice, Jareth said, a teasing note entering his voice, Iris wants to see you tomorrow. Something about a checkup. Alara's stomach flipped. A checkup. Her words, not mine. But there was something in his expression, hope, carefully contained, that made her heart race. They'd been careful since the bonding. Alara's body had needed time to heal from the silver poisoning, from months of abuse and magical depletion. But recently, she'd noticed changes. Subtle things, her scent shifting slightly, her energy levels fluctuating, certain foods suddenly unappealing. Jareth, she said slowly. Do you think? I think, he said, his hand moving to rest on her stomach, that we should wait for Iris to confirm anything. But if she confirms what I suspect, his eyes met hers, blazing with emotion. Would you be happy? Would she? The idea of a child, of bringing new life into a world that had been so cruel to her for so long, should have terrified her. Instead, thinking of a little one with Jareth's pale eyes and her stubborn spirit, thinking of raising them in a pack that was slowly learning to value strength in all its forms. I'd be happy, she whispered. Terrified, but happy. Jareth kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Whatever Iris says tomorrow, whatever the future holds, we'll face it together. Just like we've faced everything else. Together, Alara agreed, the word that had become their promise, their anchor, their truth. The next morning, Iris confirmed what Alara had suspected. She was pregnant. 8 weeks along, healthy, strong, a miracle considering what her body had endured just 3 months prior. Your alpha healing accelerated everything, Iris explained, her weathered hands gentle as she examined Alara. The bond with Jareth probably helped too. Mate bonds tend to encourage fertility. Alara sat on the examination table, her hand pressed to her stomach where new life was growing. Is it safe? After everything, the silver, the damage. Your body has healed remarkably well. Better than I've ever seen, honestly. Iris smiled. You're strong, Alara. Stronger than you know. This pregnancy should progress normally. Should. Nothing in life is guaranteed, child. But all signs point to healthy. Both of you. Iris squeezed her shoulder. Your mother would be so proud. Not just of this, but of everything you've become. Tears pricked Alara's eyes. I wish she could have seen it. She did, in her own way. Every choice she made was to give you this chance to live, to thrive, to become the alpha you were always meant to be. Iris's voice was thick with emotion. She'd be proud of your strength. And she'd be thrilled about becoming a grandmother. When Alara returned to their chambers, she found Jareth pacing like a caged wolf. He stopped the moment he saw her, his eyes searching her face. Well, he asked, trying and failing to sound casual. Alara couldn't help the smile that broke across her face. You're going to be a father. The joy that flooded through their bond was so powerful it nearly knocked her over. Then Jareth was there, lifting her, spinning her, laughing with pure, unbridled happiness. A pup, he breathed, setting her down carefully, his hands immediately going to her stomach. Our pup, Alara confirmed, covering his hands with hers. Are you ready for this? Are you kidding? I've been ready since I pulled you from that tree 7 years ago. His expression turned serious. I knew then, even if I didn't understand it, you were going to change my life. And you have, Alara. In every possible way. They spent the rest of the morning making plans, talking about the future. They'd wait a few more weeks before announcing it to the pack, let Alara get through the first trimester, make sure everything was stable. But in private, they let themselves dream. Names. Nursery designs. Whether the pup would have Jareth's coloring or Alara's. Whether they'd be wild like their father or cautious like their mother, probably both, they agreed with laughter. It felt impossible. Felt like a dream that would shatter if she examined it too closely. But it was real. All of it was real. 6 months later. The Luna ceremony took place on the winter solstice, exactly 9 months after Alara had collapsed at the Alpha King's feet. The transformation of the Grand Hall was breathtaking. Silver ribbons hung from the vaulted ceiling, catching candlelight and throwing dancing shadows across walls carved with history. Every wolf of rank stood in perfect formation, and beyond them, the entire pack, hundreds of wolves gathered to witness their Luna's formal recognition. Alara stood at the hall's entrance, her hand resting on her swollen belly, 5 months pregnant now, visibly showing, radiantly healthy. She wore Luna's formal attire, silver and black silks that flowed around her changing body, a circlet of moonstones in her hair, marking her as Alpha-born, Alpha-blood, Alpha-rightful. Maya appeared beside her, resplendent in beta colors. "Ready?" "No," Alara admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway. That's my Luna." Maya's smile was fierce and proud. "Walk with your head high. You've earned this 1,000 times over." The ceremony horns sounded deep, resonant, calling for silence and attention. The massive doors to the Grand Hall swung open, and Alara stepped through. Every eye turned to her. Every breath held. She walked slowly down the center aisle, her hand on her stomach where their pup kicked and rolled. Past council members who bowed as she passed. Past warriors who learned to respect her strength. Past young Omegas who now looked at her with hope instead of resignation, proof that they too could be more than the pack expected. Past Elder Tobias, who smiled with tears in his eyes. Past Iris, who nodded with pride. And finally, to the front of the hall where Jareth waited. He stood before his throne dressed in full ceremonial regalia, the Alpha King in all his power and authority. But when his eyes met hers, she saw only her mate. Her partner. The father of her child. The man who'd saved her. Who'd believed in her. Who'd refused to let her disappear. Alara of Corvus's line, Jareth's voice rang through the hall. "You stand before your pack to be recognized as Luna. Do you accept this responsibility? This burden? This honor?" "I do," Alara said clearly. "Do you swear to protect this pack with all your strength? To lead with wisdom and compassion? To stand beside your alpha as equal partner in all things?" "I swear it." Jareth descended from the platform, carrying an ornate silver crown, the Luna's crown, worn by only 3 women in Shadowpine's history, never by one of Corvus's line. Until now. Then by the authority granted to me as Alpha King, by the laws of our ancestors, by the will of the pack, I name you Luna of Shadowpine. He placed the crown on her head, and power surged through the hall, the pack's magic recognizing and accepting her authority. "You are Luna. Now and always. Luna. Luna. Luna." The chant rose from hundreds of throats, a wall of sound that shook the hall's foundations. Alara stood there, crowned and pregnant and seen in ways she'd never imagined possible, and let the tears fall freely. Tears for the girl she'd been invisible, dismissed, alone. Tears for the woman she'd become, strong, respected, loved. Tears for the future she was building, not just for herself, but for every wolf who'd ever felt powerless, voiceless, unseen. Jareth pulled her into his arms, and she clung to him as the pack celebrated around them. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "My Luna. My mate. My everything." "I love you too," she whispered back. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for letting me." 1 year later. Alara stood in the nursery, watching sunrise paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. In her arms, her daughter, their daughter, slept peacefully, tiny fists curled against her chest. Lily. They'd named her Lily, after the flowers that grew wild in the forest where Jareth had first saved Alara all those years ago. She was perfect. Pale eyes like her father, dark hair like her mother, and a spirit that was purely her own, fierce and gentle by turns, already showing signs of the alpha blood running through her veins. "You're up early." Alara turned to find Jareth in the doorway, sleep-rumpled and beautiful. She was fussy. "I didn't want her to wake you." "I'm already awake." He crossed to them, wrapping his arms around both his mate and his daughter. Besides, I like these quiet moments. Just us. They stood together, watching the sunrise, listening to Lily's tiny breaths. A year ago, Alara had been dying on the forest floor, bleeding out from silver poisoning, convinced she'd never see another dawn. Now she was here. Luna. Mother. Beloved. It hadn't been easy. There had been challenges, setbacks, moments when the weight of responsibility felt crushing. But she'd faced them all with Jareth beside her, with Maya at her back, with a pack that had learned to trust her. She'd changed Shadowpine in subtle but meaningful ways. Created programs for low-ranked wolves to advance based on merit. Established safe spaces for those suffering abuse. Reformed training protocols to emphasize strength without cruelty. And most importantly, she lived openly, visibly, as proof that power could coexist with compassion. That strength didn't require brutality. That leadership meant lifting others up, not pushing them down. What are you thinking? Jareth asked softly. That I'm happy, Alara said simply. For the first time in my life, I'm genuinely, completely happy. Good. He kissed her temple. Because you deserve happiness. You've always deserved it. Lily stirred in Alara's arms, her tiny eyes blinking open, pale, and alert, and full of wonder. She looked up at her parents and smiled, a toothless grin that made Alara's heart overflow. She's going to be trouble, Jareth predicted with obvious pride. Definitely, Alara agreed. But she'll be strong. And loved. And she'll never have to hide who she is. No, Jareth said firmly. She won't. Neither will any pup born to this pack from now on. You've made sure of that. Alara looked out the window again, at Shadowpine territory stretching toward the horizon. At the pack moving through their morning routines. At the life she'd built from ashes and pain and stubborn refusal to give up. She'd been too bruised to stand once. But she'd gotten up anyway. And in doing so, she'd changed everything. Come on, Jareth said, gently taking Lily from her arms. Let's go greet the day. Together. As a family. Together, Alara echoed, the word that had saved her, sustained her, made her whole. Together, they walked into the sunrise. Together, they faced whatever came next. Together, they were home. Oh, my heart. If you made it through this entire journey with me, you're officially part of the pack. Drop a love emoji in the comments and tell me what your favorite part was. And please, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now. I pour my heart into these stories, and I want you here for every single one. This story was about more than just romance. It was about finding your strength when the world tells you you're weak. About standing up even when you've been beaten down. About choosing compassion without losing your power. Alara started invisible, dismissed, alone. She ended crowned, respected, and surrounded by love. That's the kind of transformation I want for all of you, to see your own worth, to claim your power, to never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reading. Thank you for being part of this incredible community. Until next time, stay strong, stay fierce, and remember, you're never too bruised to stand. You just need to find the right pack to stand with you. All my love. Your storyteller.